Values are not beliefs. Big difference between beliefs and values. To really get in touch with where your values are, every morning you get up, write the first 5 things that come to your mind.
That's a cool.
Every morning.
I like that.
For like 3 months. And whether you like them or not, those are your personal values.
Jeff, you've been in firefighting, combat zones, counterterrorism, 75th Ranger Regiment, 10 years in CIA, and you're CEO.
I think the well culture is going to die rapidly. If that is the culture of your company, you better fix it now. That's going to be, that's going to be the conversation.
If you were at an event and someone asked you, hey, Jeff, what do you do? And what was the catalyst to cause you to do it? How would you respond?
What do I do?
Right. If I could figure that out, right?
I think honestly these days, one, I've reached a point in my life, which I think you can understand. And I think we eventually get to where the me in this story no longer matters.
Right.
And so I enjoy being a thought leader today, and I always felt like that was kind of like the buzz term, but truly with the way my life has gone and the experiences that I've had and the things that I've learned, it's really my focus today just to continue to share wisdom, to assimilate, bring everything together. So, what ultimately got here, I think if you look at the thread that runs through my entire life, even starting in childhood, is a hyper awareness to and a deep desire to kind of dissect behavior and what's happening, what's going on, and what's about, and in that predictive element. And because if you look at even in the fire service, I ran my first full scale exercise at 17. I'm like, we can do this better. I found an empty building. We're going to fake smoke it up. We got, permission to drag hose lines through. It was always important to me to create the most realistic environment possible, even at a very young age. And so, you fast forward that through the military, and then really my time at CIA, and then the company I built when I left, really focused on human performance, human behavior, human dynamics in high stress environments, which is pretty much everywhere today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's the through line. And today I look at it at all levels. I look at it at leadership. I look at it at parenting. I look at it at uh, relationship and partnership. And how does everything, I had a lens that very few people will ever get, and opportunities that just don't come along all the time. And so I've been spending the last few years now kind of stepping away from things, breaking that down, and we're going back and reanalyzing, being like, okay, where does this add value today in today's world for today's leader or today's business leader or today's operational leader, whatever it might be, or dad, or mom, dad, parenting, the whole 9 yards. And so that's kind of what I do, and that's where I've come from. That's been the process, man.
In everything that you're saying and everything that you're working with, we're very similar in that we're always looking at behavior. And I think it has to be with an innate trait, whether military or challenging situations. You get to the point you understand, why do we do what we do? And what does that mean? And I think as we get older, as we go through a lot of trials and tribulations, you start to look at deeper inside to better understand how that affects others. And you've had a storied career between a CEO and I think I'm looking at my notes here. You're at 16, you're starting a fire department, 75th Ranger Regiment, 10 years in CIA, but you're still focusing as you are right now with parenting and children and helping others like myself to better understand what happens after the fact. Because once you've been through so many challenges. So, the whole purpose of this podcast is to understand, those WTF moments, right?
Yeah.
And what did we do after that? Because I think every day, whether it's small or big, we run into those moments that we didn't expect, that triggers our natural sense of fight or flight. And it's what we do in those moments that start to define our character and what we do in the future. So you have dedicated at exploring this concept of, am I safe? Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, when I started to really get into developing and kind of training people getting ready to deploy overseas, and the individuals and the teams that I had the responsibility to kind of right put through the scenarios, put through the exercises, create these hyper realistic environments for, I ended up doing this really big kind of cultural study, if you will, looking at where these guys were operating, what was the culture like, how did they energetically connect in the space, so for instance, if I've got a guy that's trying to work in local environments, whether it's maybe deep in Africa somewhere, Pakistan, Afghanistan, the unique thing about what we would consider third world cultures, and I fundamentally believe where they are far more advanced than we are, is they can smell it on you. They know whether or not you are full of it, whether if you're dealing in certain environments, whether or not you're a believer or not, and they'll put you to the test on that. And so, where this safe mechanism really started was the dissection and understanding of how do I present myself correctly in the environment. What are the kind of anchors and things I need to throw out to be able to be comfortable being uncomfortable? How do I, walk the streets of Africa and feel okay there? How do I go into these meetings and do these things? Like what are kind of the intrinsic elements that I have to create so that I am settled and regulated in my nervous system.
Hmm.
Uh, right? Because if I think one of the big things I think you and I've talked about this before, like especially as a leader or anywhere in that world, like the moment you begin to understand you are the nervous system of
Yes.
the team, the company, the family, the community, whatever it is, and begin to take that responsibility on. Because if you're dysregulated, everyone around you is going
Right.
to be dysregulated.
Right.
And if you're dysregulated in running operations, that dysregulation is a point of anxiety, which is then triggering a nervous system energy that is being broadcast. And that's where, when you're in um, cultures that are more intuitive based, more primally based, man, they feel it instantly. That's the out that
Yeah.
comes.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So the work really was like dive deep into that angle to understand how do I begin to teach somebody or develop somebody to kind of create these anchors of safety along the way, and then of course what are the domains of the human being, and how's it going? I mean, it's still continuing to be a work in progress, um, as I explore so many angles to it. But at the end of the day, like being able to we always, especially as men, we have to anchor back to this
Hmm.
physicality, right?
Yeah.
That's a major anchor of safety for men. Like we just, if we lose that, things start to
Yep.
collapse pretty
Yep.
quick. And we've all been there. You stop going to the gym, you stop doing this, you retire from that, physicality starts to
Hmm.
diminish. We start to lose sight on personal value, and then that's just a stepping stone for things. But in action, kind of in flow, to understand, I think that's the am I safe is the ultimate human question
Yeah.
that we all kind of, that is it's running in the background,
Exactly.
right?
It hasn't
Because
evolved since caveman days, right? Your amygdala is still
no,
looking for those
yeah, we're
issues.
still,
Yeah, it doesn't
yep,
know. It doesn't have, can't differentiate between someone who's being mean and a saber-tooth tiger. It's still the same element, the same reaction, the same endorphins, the same
yep,
chemical reaction in your body.
yeah, totally. And and what I think some people don't realize is even anxiety is an activation of the threat system.
Hmm.
So, and that I think is important for people to understand. If you are, if anxiety is being developed from you, that is an activation of the threat mechanism. There is something you are threatened by, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like there's a threat to the system somewhere, or you're writing someone else's
Hmm.
anxiety, because it's just radically contagious. And so, that's like one of the first, that's an anchoring point for me. If I'm feeling anxious, my first kind of throw the line in the water. Anchor is it mine or is it somebody else's? Is my threat system being activated because I'm worried about something, or I'm concerned about something, or I have a fear about something, or am I riding someone else's anxiety that's kind of getting on me? Because that happens a lot more than you generating it.
Well,
Um,
and there's something I want you to go deeper in because you've said it a couple of times. An anchoring point, and I think that is something that we all need to understand. Help the audience understand what is an anchoring point.
Yeah, so we've come back to this concept. I looked at it, and I think connotation wise, sometimes we think, oh, that's an anchor that's kind of dragging us. That's
Mm.
that's keeping us from uh, uh, flying free. I think somebody I was talking to somebody one day. They were like, "Oh yeah, from the untethered soul to the anchor human." I like it. Um, because listen, as human beings, our system needs anchor points. We have to find places of certainty, things we can control. Like that's an intrinsic element to the system.
So
And so
give me an understanding for the average person. How do they know they have an anchor point, or how do they create one?
yeah, so I mean it comes in a couple different ways, but there's a couple processes you can do. What I used to train the guys in is kind of I call it Okasa. Uh, so it is, observe the environment,
Okay.
like be present to the environment of what's taking place, connect to something that's occurring right now. So, observation and then connect, oh, there's a squirrel right there. Because 9 times out of 10, if something's triggering the system that's causing kind of anxiety that needs you to
Right.
do something, it's not a present tense moment.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's I
Yeah.
just got off social media or I'm worried about that. It's
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
present
It's
moment,
like a
right?
residue.
Yeah, totally. It's like residue or it's something I'm that is impacting me, but it's not like right here, right now. It's because if it was, your threat system would be activated, right?
Correct.
You'd be in a different realm. And so I think observing the environment, observing the conditions allows me to kind of step back, become the observer for a second, and then I'm able to connect to what's actually happening in my present condition. Set the phone down, look around, connect the environment. Okay. And that allows me to then anchor into current present tense things.
Right.
Oh, the sky's blue. Oh, it's nice that the sun's out. Like just little tiny moments work. Once I anchor, I'm able to take a breath, stabilize the nervous system, right? Just stabilize the system for a second, and then I can take my next course of action.
So let me stop
And
you
that
there.
works.
So, what
Yeah,
is the true purpose of anchoring? So, if I'm in this challenging situation or stressful
yeah.
situation, I now identify an anchor. What is the
Mhm.
purpose of that anchor?
So the purpose of that anchor is to actually just stabilize the nervous system.
Okay, to kind of relax
Okay,
and get your bearings, not overreact, not let emotion
that's
take over.
well, and it's not even in some respects, and so it just what you're not doing is you're not compounding the issue. You're not
Yes.
riding that wave, whatever is there, into something else.
Okay.
Which then will I think, and we've all done it, right? Something triggers us,
Yeah.
and then it's like ding to ding to ding to ding to ding. Before we know it, it's like whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's like all of us. So it's an opportunity, you know, the old thing is like, hey, pause, breathe, everything else. But breath without an anchor point is kind of useless.
So, give me a real life situation that you've been through that you used an anchor, and what was the result of it?
Yeah. So I mean, I do it every day, man. I do it always, I do it. I am and I have become hyper aware to my energy or my system, my regulation, how I feel in a particular moment in time. It's one of the things I do with little man constantly now. Is I don't just do it in my head. I call it out loud. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm really frustrated right this minute. Like I don't understand
Mm,
why. And he'll kind of look at me and I'll be like, yeah, man, I don't. The other day we were driving it, and I realized I skipped lunch. We just kind of got in the
right,
flow of
right.
things,
Yeah.
and I was getting hangry, and
Been
then that
there.
characteristic. Yeah, man. And then it's like traffic's bothering me, and it's like,
Mm,
why isn't this person moving? And I'm kind of in, and often, urgency starts to creep in, which
Mhm.
is awful. But just being able to be like, whoa, why am I doing that? Anchor in, look around, be like, oh no, I'm okay right this minute. Take that breath. Why am I feeling like this? Oh, I did not eat,
And
and
I don't want to miss that because I think you sort of gloss over because you're used to it, but people forget to stop and ask why.
yeah,
Why am
I
I
mean,
doing
that's
this? Why am I feeling this? Because it feels so natural. It's such a natural reaction to a situation that you continue within that emotion without
yeah,
stopping and going, wait, this is not right. Back to that anchor. Why am I feeling anxious? Why am I feeling hangry? Oh, I haven't eaten, right? So, first, you got to know that that is a trigger of the reaction you're feeling,
right.
right? But also, if you do not know that's the trigger, is really taking that self inventory.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling like this? This is not normal. This is not the usual. Okay, what's causing it? And then sort of detaching from it, looking around and saying, what is triggering why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling? And I'll tell you, go ahead.
No, no, I was gonna say, I don't want to go too far because you made a point in there that I think is important for people to understand. Finding your baseline. This is where the work comes into play. So, in order to be effective in this, like in order to understand that you are dysregulated, you have to understand what it feels like
Correct.
to be
Yes.
regulated, to be in a calm state, right? To have the nervous system at ease
Mm,
and at rest. And listen, very few of us are there. I mean, my nervous system, clearly from my life, like operated on a much higher threshold. So it required a lot more for me to recognize that I was out of pocket or out of
hmm
zone, and post the stellar ganglion treatment and basically the new nervous system that I've been gifted, that's now a Mount Everest between like what I know my nervous system can be like versus when I start to get, pinged or agitated or I feel anxiety come in or whatever's there. So there is, this does require work, and to re-baseline yourself is important. I mean, that's a lot of the how do I begin to anchor? Well, you've got to kind of find your baseline and work yourself through the process, and then you become hyper aware to the anomalies, right? To
mm,
the shifts.
yeah.
Ooh, I don't like that. That doesn't feel good. What's going on that's causing me not to feel good?
So let's take this into the real world. You've been a CEO, you've been in business. Think about brand new leaders, right? And I've seen every organization do this. You get your top performers who are doing great, you promote them to manage people, but never give them the tools to do so. Because what you
Yeah.
want them is to clone themselves and others without the
Yeah.
tools on how to do that. How is a new leader who's listening to this episode, how can they start applying that to improve their leadership skills?
Yeah. I mean, I think listen, it's a, I was thinking about this the other day. Being a leader today is scary.
Barry.
It is, right? I mean, I was doing my walk yesterday morning thinking about it as I'm building out this anchored leader program and like what do I want to say to introduce it and how would I talk about it? And we almost forget that leadership is a choice,
Mhm.
right? And so one, we have to accept the responsibility of the choice that we've made to lead. That there is an anchor point,
Yep,
right? I don't have to do this. I mean, I know you and I both have probably can look back at our history and be like, we hated being the leader when really all we had to do was like, I don't want to do this anymore,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah,
Right. But there was a lot in the way of that decision alone.
correct.
Okay. So I think as a young leader, a rising star, somebody who wants to be there, one, understanding it's always a choice and you have to choose it because
Mhm.
it's not an easy path. And then I think the next things are, it is you kind of got to find you're going to play, especially as a young leader, you're going to have to improv it for a little while. Some things are going to land and some things aren't. You got to find like what's my style, what's my flow, and is that going to work or is that not going to work? And you mimic kind of who you see around you and who you feel connected to, and so you bring that in, but then you got to start to make that your own. And in that process, here's what I like to say. I mean, there's whatever the style is going to be and whatever the application is going to be and whatever your things are going to be as a leader, at the core of it, if you do not understand and have a practice to regulate your nervous system, you are the source of the issue.
Say that
Right.
again, because I don't think too many organizations and leaders do not get that. I was in a board meeting yesterday, and we had interviewed managers who were struggling with their teams. And I asked a simple question. You've told them to do these things, they're not doing it. Whose fault is it? Every manager said, it's their fault. We told them what to do it. I said, no, it's your fault because you're expecting them to do something that you yourself are not doing. And you assume that just because I told them to do it, they should be able to do so. But it was the
Yeah.
executive team who is not reflecting that, right? They don't
Yeah.
recognize it's you are not setting these standards and the expectations, not by what you say, but what you do. So that's
How you,
critical.
and even how your energy shows up. Right. I
Right.
mean,
Yes.
you know when you're in the presence of a leader,
Yeah.
right? Nobody has to say anything. Dude walks, man or woman, they walk in the room, you're like, okay, they're in charge.
Yeah.
And you know it.
Yeah.
Nothing has to be spoken, nothing's been said, nothing's been done, but you know it. That is a regulated human being. Because understand this, regulated doesn't mean like, hey, I'm just chilled out and everything's good. That is not regulated. Regulated is my internal state matches the external conditions. Dysregulated is my internal state does not match the external conditions. And so this is becomes the dial knob for leaders. This is why understanding kind of your base level nervous, like where you can get yourself baseline so you understand what's happening, what externally is happening to you so you can regulate it and manage it, but then also knowing how to turn it on when you need to turn it on, turn it off when you need to turn it off, and run that dial knob. That to me, I wrote a recent article that kind of talked about emotional intelligence fatigue. Uh, because we're always having to,
Yeah.
now we have to do all these things. And I'm a big listen. I mean, dude, I'm the guy that wrote the CIA's Firearms Instructor course and like baked emotional intelligence
Yes.
all through it. So I am not a naysayer of emotional intelligence, but there's a place where resonance needs to start coming in and understanding kind of that energy, that energetic connection between human beings. And that's not hippy dippy stuff. That's straight
It's
up science,
absolutely.
man. Right. And so as a leader, if I'm regulated or if it's go time, like if Jeff shows up and it's go time, I don't have to say anything. Everybody around me like, okay, Banman's here. We're rocking and rolling. Let's do it. You know what I mean? And every listen, man, every failure in leadership I have had, and I have had plenty, has been because I have been unable to regulate myself to the conditions as they were when I needed to.
Okay, you're going to
And
have to give me a real life example. You know that. Give me an
dude, I
example.
mean, I had a the one that started it all, man. I'm 20, I don't know, 3 or 4 out of the military, back to the fire service, promoted to captain. Had 2 fire stations, 3 pieces of equipment, about 18 people on my crew. I grew up in the fire service outside DC when it was still, I was trained by like gritty 60s, 70s
Yeah,
firemen.
old
You know,
school.
yeah, you were just yeah. So very blue collar, very very whatever. And then I come straight out of the military and I'm back to the fire service, and the fire service had changed significantly in who was in it and who wanted to be a fireman. And I was hey, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're 15 minutes late kind of guy.
Yeah,
Literally
yeah.
I got yelled at for tapping my watch at someone, at one point in time. And I mean, here's the polarity of the issue. One, on the fire ground, dude, my crew, we rocked it. I mean, we operated at the top tier and they were great people. Flip side, I ran them into the dirt so bad that we basically had a mutiny. I mean, they called the chiefs into the room, sit around the table, him or us. We're not doing this anymore. I was running them in the dirt,
Wow.
and was totally disconnected to it because I was still in this, heightened energy, and you got to be ready, and you got to be this, and you got to be that, and I did not know how to like. Didn't realize there was a
Yes.
throttle knob at that
Yes.
point in time. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize like actually back it off for a little bit and be a little more connected.
Yeah.
Uh, but and so I existed at a dysregulated state, like on the fire ground. My chief would be like, "Dude, when you show up," he told me one time, he's like, "I can feel the energy shift when you show up on the fire ground. Like there's a calmness that occurs when you show up." But I don't know, you're a in the firehouse. You know what I mean? You're a shit show in the firehouse, and you can bleep that out. There's just no other
No.
way to say it. You know what I
No.
mean? But
It's what it is.
uh, and I was, man, and I was, because I had the same energetic level on the fire ground in the firehouse every day, and that doesn't work. Um,
Mm.
and so that was, and I had to really take a big, I mean, that was a big kick in the head, which actually that's the thing that started me down the emotional intelligence line, because the first book I read is Daniel Goleman's Primal Leadership. And
Mm.
I remember listening to it, I'll date myself, CD in the car, listening to it, driving away from the firehouse, thinking, those guys are idiots. And he's talking about all the great things of like the commanding style of leadership and all the benefits around it. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to turn this car around. We're going to go back and I'm going to make them listen to it. They're going to sit down. And then he starts talking about all the negatives to it. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. Nope, nope. I'm just going to stay right here in the
Right
car
here.
to talk about this ever again.
But I think there's, when you look at today's leader in the workplace, for example,
Yeah,
something you just said, when you walked in externally, energy changed, everybody worked hard because there was a different environment than in the environment in the firehouse. So,
right.
what's the fix? So, when you look at those two environments, why did it work in one environment and not the other?
Well, if you look at it like so consider the point, right? Regulated internal state matches the external conditions.
Mm,
On the fire ground, you want Bandman showing up,
yeah,
right? That's you want all of me, or run around the world or doing it, like you want all of me and all that intrinsic goodness that
right.
makes me the dude that I am, right? You want that. But in the firehouse, that's not the condition. In some of the training environments, that's not the condition. So if I'm kind of pinged and like, all right, we're gonna do this and make sure the fire truck's ready, and I'm just kind of in that more, militaristic, stand on your
Drill
head type
instructor,
thing. Huh?
drill instructor type of
Yeah,
mindset.
it
Yeah,
has to be around that. I mean, and so what happens is you begin to erode the confidence, you begin to erode trust, you begin to erode capability. Like it just, and that was 100% my responsibility.
hmm,
I did that because what I couldn't do is go, okay, cool, we're done there. Now we're in the firehouse. Hey guys, here's what we need to be doing. I can ride the wave into a little bit more affiliative space. I can even introduce some kind of democratic style of leadership. I can start to kind of lay in the aspects of those various things. I don't have to be commanding and pace setting every minute of every day, which is where I was.
right.
But it's also my upbringing. That's all I knew
Yeah,
at the time,
exactly.
right? Yeah, and so, um, and that doesn't come from a, like, you have to have the mental constructs and the tools, like the knowledge
Hmm.
of the style and the time and the approach and all of that. But then but you, as well as I've seen it, then that fails a lot. Like you can know all kinds of stuff. The question is, are you showing up as that? And showing up of
Correct.
that, it doesn't come out of your mouth, doesn't even come out of your actions. It comes from your energy.
Hmm.
And I always encourage leaders, like 3 minutes before they go into the next meeting, rhythmic breathing process, just in through the nose, just open, relax, let the breath leave the body, you know, get into that regulated space. Uh, and you will be amazed at the connection you open and the invitation you now have to engage with your people in a whole different way that you never expected, never even probably knew existed, really. It's ninja skill stuff, man. It's
Yeah.
it's the way it works. Yeah.
And we all react to that. But something you said earlier was that being a leader today is extremely different and difficult.
Yeah.
Why so? And then how can today's leaders learn from some of the lessons you've had?
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of jump back a
Yeah.
little bit because as a leader, let's say I'm going in to have a team meeting today, maybe it's going to be a little bit difficult. Maybe we're underperforming. Maybe we need to move in a new direction or whatever it is. If I have taken 2 to 3 minutes regulating my nervous system before I come in there, I am in a safe energy space. So we talked about, anchoring in safe and understanding the safe mechanism. So when I've activated my safe mechanism, when I have found safe, I am safe. And that energetic transfer opens the opportunity for people to be like, okay, I can listen to this guy or I can listen to this woman. I can understand them. Okay, they're relatable. So I'm triggering some of those finite moments in the along the way. uh, Give me your question one more time, Rico. I'm
So,
sorry.
leadership is very difficult these days, right?
Yeah.
So, what's causing it to be difficult or different in this day and age? And what are some lessons that you have learned that they can apply as leaders?
Okay. Yeah. All right. Don't do anything I ever did. Only
Number one.
do what I, yeah. So here's where I think here's the place that I think, to my frame of reference, when I was developing hyper realistic scenarios to elicit behaviors that would mimic the behavior an individual would present in a real world condition. Okay. Sorry to be kind of geeky on this one.
Yeah, that's fine.
My dial knobs for that scenario were intensity, diversity, and complexity. So, one, how intense was I going to create it? And was I dialing it up or dialing it down?
Okay.
When we look at diversity, it's the number of variations that exist in the environment that I have to account for, process through, and connect with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then complexity is the level of difficulty or cognitive requirement to navigate the current situation.
Right. Okay.
So those are three isolated components.
Okay.
And I would sit back and those would be the dial knobs, right? And I would start to see how people performed at various levels.
Okay.
When you reach a state where intensity, diversity, complexity, where all three dial knobs are climbing, uh, those are what I call nervous system agitators. They're not, they're unaware things that are occurring in the environment. Like you don't have awareness to it. You're not like, oh, today's environment's very, intense or whatever. Like that's, but you feel it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, in today's world, I don't know that there are very few places that those three components are not, if we're on a volume knob of 10, are not at least a 7, if not more, an 8, 9, or 10, or flowing back between a 7 and a 10 every single
Yeah.
day. So there is no rest in the environment.
What's causing that in your opinion?
I think it's conditional. I think we've reached a place where, you know, the, what is good is also bad in
Yeah.
ways,
Right.
right? I think the competitive landscape, like uh, anybody can do anything today. Anybody can crank a business out tomorrow, and they can have a much lesser product, just a piece of crap product in whatever it is, consulting, physical products, whatever it
Yeah.
might be. But if they've got the dollars behind them, they're just gonna smoke you because
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the money to compete to reach the audience you need in the social media channels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a persistent sense of urgency in the environment, which then just eats the system alive. Um, and it's just the environmental conditions. Everybody's on the race for the thing, and are we making numbers? Are we not making numbers? We don't have time to nurture a sale anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
right? To actually build a relationship with a customer or a client and be like, hey, I got you here, right? And have that long-term
Right.
trust. It's about turnover, it's about, quarterly numbers, it's about money in the bank account, and so the landscape is now baked in urgency, operating in a condition that is extremely intense, extremely complex, and extremely diverse.
And how does that affect the workforce itself? You have
Crushes
yeah,
them.
because you have organizations trying to find the right person and then deal with want to work from home, that work from the office. You have these big companies now saying, no, you got to come back into the office,
Yeah,
right? After,
yeah.
you know, working from
Which
home
is
for
which
two
is
years.
triggering which is triggering the threat system for
Right.
them. So their anxieties go. I
Sure.
mean, and you can't open your phone today and not have something triggering your system.
Mm,
Uh, and we don't live in a present condition environment ever.
no.
Nobody does. You know what I mean? Like I like to think if I was starting over today, I would be like a plumber or a carpenter or
Well,
well, and here in Oregon, a couple of the dads, they're like tree cutters, right? I mean, I'm like, dude, that's what I'm talking about. Hyper present role job. Don't don't need
Well,
to
there's a huge
be
renaissance on
on.
all the blue collar work that was going away, and everyone's worried about AI, but people now going back to welding and plumbing and all of those hands on
I think that's
because
going to be the most valuable. I think
yeah,
you're going to watch the income rate out of the core skill
hmm
climb through the roof over the next several years.
absolutely. So what
Yeah.
if you were CEO of an organization right now and you're thinking about, okay, here's the challenges for 2025, for example, in the
Okay.
workforce, performance, the right people, six generations in one place now.
Yeah.
Taking all your experience, what would be two or three things you would say as a CEO? How do I develop the right environment, the right culture, so that my workforce can perform at the high level in a psychologically safe environment?
Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting because we just had Billy Ryan on the podcast this morning. He was the director of operations for the Atlanta Braves when I met
Nice.
him.
Yeah.
That leadership program. He hired me to come in and do it. And like after the morning road march, and a couple of the guys kind of freaking out, he's driving back like, I'm going to get fired. I'm so going to get fired. And we've become best friends since. Right? We've become really
Nice.
good friends since. Um, and we were having the conversation about organizational values this
Okay.
morning. Okay. And listen, the landscape's going to change in business and life, period. I don't, if you live in the United States of America and pretty much anywhere around the world, there are going to be shifts coming and they've already come,
Such
and
as.
well, I mean, I think you're watching, some of the DEI stuff go
Yep.
away. I mean, we'll call it the Trump effect
Hmm.
is going to be in full force, and that doesn't, wherever you fall on that chain, you fall on that chain.
Yeah.
I I think what is interesting, and I'll make this point, and I know we want to get through here. Uh, I think the well culture is going to die rapidly. The well, let's well, nah, well, that culture. If that is the culture of your company, you better fix it now because that's gonna be, well, we're dead.
Well, we're out of business.
Well, we're out of business. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to be the conversation, I think. And so coming from that, what we were talking about today, I think the first step, and this is something I said if I was doing, I would get so radically clear on the values of my company that I, as the CEO or with the board or whatever it is, the values as they need to be. And I'm not talking about going and spending 50 grand to have somebody come in to have the words written, that 50 to 80% of your workforce is going to be like, oh yeah, those are our values, that you see every day. Like, what are those values, and call them out distinctly. He's done some work with some hedge funds lately and a few other things. We were talking about this, and I'm like, if I ran a hedge fund, it's like Uh, our one of our values is to maximize shareholder value. Now, in some businesses, I don't think that works. That's kind of an internal known aspect. But if you're running a hedge fund, that's 100% it. And I expect people to be uh, uh, what was the word I used? Uh, aggressive in their efforts, right? Not inappropriate, but aggressive. But and so really evaluating what are the values of your organization, and do your people meet those values? Is that in alignment or not? And if those aren't in alignment, it's not that they're bad people, they're just not a fit for the company. So I think potentially 2025 is a reevaluation year. Do I have the right team? Do I have the right people to execute the mission that I need to execute? That's one thing.
And I want to hold
Two,
right there because
yeah,
too often, like you said, values are hung on a wall, and value should be a verb. But I think in 2025 and any future workforce is identifying what behaviors reflect
yeah,
those values. That's
yep,
what's going to
yeah.
really
That's the work,
create
not the
the
verbiage.
culture, right?
Yeah. What are the traits of the person that encompass those values? Somebody told me a long time ago, values are not beliefs. Big difference between beliefs and values. To really get in touch with where your values are, every morning you get up, write the first 5 things that come to your mind.
Hmm. That's a cool
Every
one. I
morning
like that.
for like 3 months. And whether you like them or not, those are your personal values. Values are where we put our attention.
I
Now,
like that.
yeah, if I can do the work to align my beliefs, right, my core beliefs with my values, that's the work to be done. And then to do that in a corporate culture in a company, that's some serious work right there.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So like if I'm the CEO, I'm like, what are the top 5 things that are on my mind right now every morning I wake up? And I'm going to track that for the next however long. And then I'm going to look at it and I'm going to come out with 3 to 5 things that are the same across the board. Okay, well, that is what's calling my attention.
Hmm.
So that is the most valuable thing we need to be focused on right this minute,
Got it.
right?
Right.
And so if I take those, I think we get confused because here's our beliefs, here's our ethics, here's our ethos, if you will, right? I think we need to kind of get back to the values are not ethos. Ethos is something different. So establish an ethos, like here's what we're going to be, and you remember this, commanders in
Yeah.
paragraph,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, bunch of Rangers jump out of an airplane. The only thing they remember out of that big op order is one sentence, and that's all that matters. Because though I be the lone survivor, that is the sentence that matters,
Yeah.
right? What is the ethos of the company, which will drive the culture? What are the values that we're setting out for 2025? Meaning these are the most important items to this business and to our customers or to our clients this year, right? And so that is what we value most because that is where we're going to put our attention. Then when I bring everybody in, we're going to start to create a culture of regulation, of like we're going to learn. Okay, hey, tell you what, we're going to understand all the waves we're going to ride, and I in my talk somebody nailed it there. The enemy's got to reload too. There's always a pause in the gunfight.
Hmm.
And to be in business today, be a successful leader today, you are in a gunfight. Like it's just there, man. I mean, numbers and budgets and payroll, and you are physiologically, internally, you are in a gunfight. I can prove it to you. I can wire you up and be like, okay, here's you, and here's somebody in combat. Looks pretty much the same way. Matter of fact, the guy in combat's a lot cooler than the
And a
guy
lot
that you
calmer
are.
than you are right now because he's got
Yeah.
training within that combat. So
Yeah,
yeah.
right. And he's already made some understandings of
Yep.
acceptance. So, I would pull my leaders together in a very powerful way, not in I think the old well culture and the corporate speak and all that stuff. Like, it's time to get serious. That we're going to be successful in 2025. And we're going to be successful because we're going to show up with the energy that the market demands.
Okay. So I want to keep you
Right?
on track. You were having that
Yeah.
for the Braves. First one was clarity of values and
Yep.
the
Clarity of value.
traits that resemble those behaviors. What's next?
Yep. So we did. Let's put ethos and values in the first pocket.
Okay.
Then a what I would call a regulated workforce, and
Regulated
that starts
workforce.
with leaders. That's really what I'm talking about. Sorry to jump on you on that
No,
one,
you're good. You're good.
but that's the investment that I would make in my leadership team. Is how do I get my team to be the calm in the chaos? Because you are either the calm or you are the chaos. There is no in between. And by doing that, I'm creating a foundation of safe within the company culture,
Hmm.
right? And we're all going to have moments. We're all going to get frustrated, but understanding how to communicate that and being like, yeah, I actually am upset right this minute, and here's why. And I'm not upset at you, but I am upset, and I need to express that right this second. Maybe becomes the languaging around some things. So I think that becomes the second fold, and then the third piece is really assessing if you're building a company for the long haul, or if you are a company and you're trying to exist for a period in time, the skill sets are out there
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I would take my ethos, I would take my values, and all of my job, and everyone would have to do an evaluation, and people may have to go, and I would, and if they're great people, listen, you can let great people go if they're not aligned with the organization. And the way you would do that is you call your buddy at whatever else and be like, listen, I've got, Joe here, who is a phenomenal programmer. Joe just doesn't keep the pace or align with where we are, or he is dysregulated to the organization itself. And I really want to help him transition into an environment. And I know your environment really might fit him, right? And that's a high quality leader right there who's willing to do that
I was going to
for his
say
people.
that that is true leadership. They're always having your team's best interest in mind, right?
Yep.
Knowing that they're
Yep.
not a good fit, but also making sure they're taken care of if they have to leave
Yep.
or they need to be in a different position. How can I
Right.
help you? And I think people
Yep.
think about firing in a negative because that's always been the experience. But really,
Yeah.
really good leaders who care about their teams are always looking out for them no matter what. And even the ones
Yeah.
that maybe don't need to be fired, but realize it's time for you to leave. You need to grow. You've taken the most you can here. You can't become your very best self here. It's time for you to
Yeah.
go. And pushing them out and supporting them. So
Yep.
great leaders really understand that nuance between that,
Yeah.
as well as the ones who are toxic, right? They may be your top performers, your high revenue earners, but it's affecting the team. And it's time for them
Yeah.
to go. And it goes back to your number one. If leaders, organizational leaders, CEOs, owners do not have a clear understanding of their values and the
Yeah.
behaviors and the traits that encompass those values and aligns to those ethos, you're hiring the wrong people. You do not have that sense of self because you have the wrong people in the wrong environment. And worst
Yep.
case, you don't know how to lead them.
Oh, you don't. You don't. If these are your values and this is your ethos and they don't match that, that's a
Exactly.
yep. Um, you're just, and I don't care what that ethos is, and I don't care what those values are. I'm indifferent to that, whatever your style and your genre is. And I think that's the thing. It's like, let's stop pushing the square peg in the round
Yeah.
hole because because it's the latest buzzword and this is how we lead. Like, really, if you're the CEO, you are the commander in chief of that organization, and so don't be afraid to insert your all of yourself into the organization. Like, this is how it works, because there's nothing more than trying to lead somebody that you can't lead. That's just, and I think a lot of leaders are stuck in that today.
Yeah, and especially with the workforce, with all of the changes that are coming, too many leaders who have been in that position. Something you had said earlier, this is how we've always done it, because that's what they're comfortable with. They're uncomfortable with the change and adaptability. And if you don't, not only are you going to get passed over, but you are hurting all the other organizations.
Yeah.
Um, and you've been through firefighting, military. So you have your CEO. You have seen a variety of different environments, people, and situations. Is there a common trait that new leaders can at least focus on that is across the board that you have either experienced as being led or leading that would benefit them if they did one thing that would help them become better leaders?
I mean, here's what I will tell you. When I was doing all the work and doing all the research and trying to understand the human being, I developed a math calculation. Right, a thought math calculation,
Okay.
uh, and that calculation was my foundation, meaning like your foundational knowledge or your training. It might be your degree or your fundamental skills, right? That is just core to who you are, what you are, plus my experience.
Okay.
Okay. So most of the world has existed in just those two little components in life, right? I learn something and I go out and experience it. Okay, I gain an experience. Maybe I'll go back and learn something. It's a very one for one exchange. And as a leader, especially in today's environment, you don't have that time, right? That's a slow process to assimilate leadership. That's why a long time ago, you know, you weren't 25 as a captain. You didn't weren't making captain until later in life
Right.
because that right provided that space. It doesn't exist anymore. So how do you accelerate your foundation and your experience? And so when I look at this, it was how do I put the exponent on those? And that is 100% dictated by someone's level of openness,
Mm.
right? If you take the big five personality test, openness to experience, openness to ideas, a person's level of openness, because openness is kind of a composite of imagination, humility, curiosity, right? That's what makes someone open. Okay. If that individual is not open, then you are stuck where you are. And so as a leader or assessing leaders or becoming a leader, like I want to go to work on my level of openness. And if you've kind of been a stuck in the road person, that may take some C4, but you may have to do that stuff
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
I had to is like
Yeah. Same here.
right. Um, but what the product of that calculation is, my level of comfort, right? My ability to be comfortable being uncomfortable,
Yeah.
the willingness to sit in it and know I'm okay. My confidence, meaning my faith in self, my faith in my training, my faith in my skills, and my creativity, my
Mm.
willingness and ability to just figure it out because it's never going to go the way I plan.
Right.
Right. And I call that your C3: comfort, confidence, creativity. These are the intrinsic elements that, with hundreds of interviews of top performing people from all kinds of industries. And, you're talking top operators, guys out of SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force and, all the big names
Right.
and pro athletes and top tier CEOs, to listen to their stories, to listen to their experiences and ask the right questions. Every time I could come back and go, there it is, there it is, there it
Mm.
is. There was a failure of it, there was a failure of it, there was a fracture in it, whatever else. And that is all directed by my level of openness because I have to be able to bring it in, assimilate it, learn from it, and move it in about a 24-hour period or less
Mm.
today. Yeah. And so, your C3 scalable. So I'm always working on, okay, where am I uncomfortable and how do I get comfortable being uncomfortable? How do I be okay in that space? And I think that's from a leadership standpoint, like go to work there because that's going to start you here and lead you down the
Mm.
rest of this path. Because you're going to find if you do the work, you're going to
Yeah.
discover.
You're gonna see some things you may not want to discover, but you talked about the three C's, and you have mentioned something about with your book that I believe it just came out. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, yeah, it came out. The first one came out last July. When it all goes to hell. Uh,
Mm.
it is how to navigate crisis and chaos in some ways, and I talk about all these things. Um, the safe mechanism, the intuitive guidance system. It's less. It's not a prepper book. It's a how do I function and operate in these conditions, and kind of timely appropriate.
So the three C's are in the book, correct?
Yeah, yeah, comfort,
Okay.
confidence, creativity. Yep, they're in there.
And you can get them on Amazon. But you also
Yep.
wrote another book, did you not?
Not yet. So the next one is coming. The next one
Okay.
is coming here. I was writing the one that's coming when I hit a wall on some concepts and some thoughts and needed a brain break, and then that's what I cranked out in that space was this one.
Okay. So this
The
is
next
not
one comes
you.
out. Oh yeah, that's right. That's an old one. Oh yeah, that's
So
a
I mean, but these
uh,
concepts work, whether
yeah,
you're in work, whether
yeah,
you're a leader, but also with kids. I think the
yeah.
greatest
Listen,
form of leadership is how you lead your children, your family. And I think
yep,
that's a very big thing. So you also have, 10 life skills that will create a closer relationship with your kids and transform the
yep,
way you parent. To me, the true measure of character of a leader, if you have a family, is your family, right? How your kids respond. What do they do and how they
100%.
do it, right?
Yep. Yep. I mean, that's actually more of your purpose than anything else, than any
Absolutely.
company or anything else. Trust me, I chased the opposite of that for a long time.
Yeah.
And really, the only thing that matters is being dad.
And speaking of that, you also have a
Yeah.
project, right? That is called the Banman Perspective. Tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah. So I've as I've been doing a lot of writing this last year and bringing all these things together, I kind of needed a central node
Yeah.
for the brain of mine. And so the Bandman Perspective, running a podcast that we're doing long form conversations, really exploring various things, looking at various perspectives of what's going on in life. And then, one of the unique things that I wanted to do, I'm not a fan of coaching. I'm not a fan of courses. I think I don't know, that's just my thing. Just that doesn't work for me. I know people that are phenomenal coaches.
Right.
I'm not that. You know what I mean? But yet I wanted to find a way to bring what I've learned to the market. And so what I've done is, set aside coaching and courses and developed these conversations. So I built, sort of, for instance, like the Anchored Leader course or Anchored Leader conversation, 12 weeks. We have a 0 week of onboarding. And then I've structured this out to where it comes into your inbox. You get your email. If it's a video, it's 7 minutes or less. I'm maybe taking 10 minutes out of your day, and so I've removed the urgency from it and created kind of this long form conversation, over a period of time, so that you can actually start to kind of play and test and bring this stuff into action, and integrate it into your life. So yeah, that's and I've done that with the Anchored Leader. Anchored Human is more operating in today's environment, today's condition. Anchored Dad is there. Kate, my daughter, who's just so brilliant, asked me last night. She's 20, and she's like, "Dad, can I do the Anchored Woman?" I'm like, "Yes, you can."
Yeah. Nice.
She is on it. She is on it. I mean, it is. So she's going to come on the podcast. We're going to talk about, because she's
Nice.
at 20, she's trying to figure out how do I retain all my womanhood, all my femininity, yet be all of who I am, who is this brilliant human being who has a lot to offer the world. And so, man, it's so cool to listen to her. I'm just makes me light up
Kudos
inside.
to
It's so
you
cool.
right there.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
this. I think it's so needed. I really like this. The task force dad. There's so many. Who we
Yep.
are as men, who we are as fathers. Sometimes we
Yep.
don't have a place to communicate with other fires, listen to other people, have a safe
Yep.
space to speak to. So I'm really happy that you're doing that, especially also for our military, having challenges and experiences with like-minded individuals. So
Yep.
definitely check out the Bandman Perspective. I think you'll learn a lot, and especially if Jeff and the people that he works around, he will definitely bring so much value to that. So thank you so much for creating that project right there.
Yep.
All right, so we're almost to the end. So I have
Okay.
two more things. So anyone who was listening to this podcast, um, what would be a reason? What would be the biggest takeaway they can take away from our conversation and immediately apply that creates a fix for them?
I think it is. I think it is. It is. It is kind of the Okasa. It's not
Right?
kind of. It is the Okasa method. When I'm when you begin to sense that dysregulation or something, or you're feeling off, because that most people know. You can be like, I don't, whatever that is, observe the conditions as they are, not as you want them to be, not as you hope they would be, as they are. Connect to something in the present moment, something that is actually happening in your line of sight that you can reach out and touch, not the phone, physical present environment. Anchor into that and stabilize the nervous system by breathing. Just one or two, let it settle for a second. Okay. So I've anchored and stabilized. Then choose your next course of action.
Mm.
And that next course of action may be take another breath, maybe walk away,
Get something to
maybe
eat.
get something to eat. Right. Right. But that will give you, that activates, discernment.
Mm.
You're no longer in your head. You're now you're listening to yourself at that moment. And it literally takes that much time. I mean, it's a fraction of a moment for you to run that cycle. And if you blow everything else out of the water, just think, oh, I've got to, look around, settle myself. Oh, yeah, I'm here. Cool. Check in. Oh, breathe. Okay, I'm stable. Maybe I need one more breath. Now, what do I need to do? And that answer will always be there.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got to listen to it.
Yeah. Excellent.
Right.
Or
Right.
act upon what you realize.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is what
Exactly.
I need to
Yep.
do. Okay, acknowledge and then follow through. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Excellent.
So, however that folds out for you, that's it. You know what I mean? That's what I would say.
Now, I was really looking forward to this. Thank you so much, Jeff. So we have one final thing that we do in the show. What WTF question would you have for the next guest?
What's the fix?
No, WTF as in what the fuck?
Oh, okay. Um, I don't know, man. That's a tough one. Listen, that's a tough one for me because I have removed myself from so much now.
Okay.
You
So
know what I
if you were
mean?
interviewing a guest around,
Yeah.
tell me about your biggest WTF moment, what would be a question you would want to have answered?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd like to hear what they've what they've learned and then exactly what they did.
Okay.
I mean, it goes to the fix, right? But that's why I like what you did when you told me, you're like, I'm doing this. I'm like, that's it. Because so often we recognize it
Mm-hmm.
and then we lose track of what we did to correct it.
Okay.
What was the absolute distinct step-by-step course correction you took to recover, to regain, whatever it was. What was that? And if they don't know it, then they probably need to go figure it
Yeah.
out.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for all your time, for your wisdom, your insight. All of Jeff's information will be in the show notes. Please check them out. Such a wealth of knowledge. So, we just even not even touch the top of what he knows around behavior and everything else. So, Jeff, thank you so very much for being on. I really, really appreciate it. And make sure you hit subscribe, follow us, leave your comments below, and we'll see you in the WTF moment next time. Thank you.